They say there are roads in Japan that lead nowhere. Roads that were built, forgotten, and erased, because something waited at their end. In the quiet mountains of Fukuoka, there is such a road. A path not found on any map, guarded by a rusted sign that warns in fading words. Greater than, do not enter. This place is not part of Japan. No one remembers who built the road. No one remembers who lived beyond it. But sometimes, when the mist rolls down the mountain and the rain hums softly on the asphalt, a phone rings deep in the woods. And if you're foolish enough to answer, the village remembers you. Chapter 1. The road that doesn't exist. Rain tapped softly against the windshield, smearing the dim glow of the gas station lights into ghostly streaks. Beyond the glass, mist crept in thick, swallowing the edges of the mountains. Ryo Tanaka, a freelance journalist, skeptic by profession and cynic by nature, stared at the message on his phone. An anonymous text, no sender, no subject. Only a set of GPS coordinates and a single line. Greater than, if you want to know the truth about Inunaki, come here, tonight. The name alone sent a chill down his spine. Inunaki Village, a place erased from every map of Japan, a forbidden zone said to be not part of this country. Stories told of travelers who went in and never came back, or returned no longer human. Ryo smirked, though unease crawled beneath his skin. Urban legends sell better than facts, he muttered. Beside him, Yuki Nakamura, a folklore student with a quiet fascination for the supernatural, closed her notebook. You're serious about this? People disappeared there after a massacre in 1948. No one's been allowed near it since. That's why we're going, Ryo said. He started the engine. Dash dash dash. Into the mountains. The car rolled out of the gas station and onto the mountain road. The higher they climbed, the thicker the fog grew. The GPS began to spin aimlessly before freezing altogether. After an hour, the headlights caught a rusted metal sign, barely standing. Ryo stepped out and wiped off the grime with his sleeve. Underneath the flaking paint, the warning could still be read. Greater than, do not enter. This place is not part of Japan. Yuki's voice trembled. This is it, the entrance to Inunaki. A gust of cold wind whispered through the trees. Ryo turned on his recorder. Greater than, November 14th. Investigating what's believed to be the entrance to the forbidden village of Inunaki. No signal, no signs of life. The air feels heavy. Dash dash dash. The bridge. They followed a narrow dirt path that seemed to appear only when the fog allowed it. Eventually, they reached a wooden bridge, broken in the middle, its planks rotting and slick with moss. Yuki froze halfway across. Did you hear that? Ryo stopped. The woods had fallen silent. Then, from deep within the mist, a whisper. Soft, drawn out, almost intimate. Greater than, Ryo, Yuki? The flashlight shook in his hand. He spun around, but there was no one, only mist and the faint smell of rusted iron. Echoes, he said quickly, just echoes. But his pulse refused to slow. Dash dash dash. The vanishing photograph. Trying to steady her nerves, Yuki raised her camera. Proof of what we found, she whispered. The shutter clicked. When she checked the screen, her breath caught. The photo was empty, no bridge, no forest, only a dark silhouette standing behind Ryo. Ryo, there's someone right behind you. He snatched the camera, his hands trembling. The image flickered once and vanished. File deleted. Must be a glitch, he said, though his voice cracked on the word. Dash dash dash. The light in the mist. As they turned to leave, a faint yellow glow appeared between the trees, like an old lantern swaying gently in the fog. Someone might still live here, Ryo said, pushing forward. Wait, Yuki cried, we don't know what it is. The light floated deeper into the woods. They followed it past moss-covered stones and collapsed torii gates, until an ancient sign came into view, its characters carved in fading strokes. Greater than Kwan Ming Kun, Inunaki Mura. A gust of icy wind swept through. Their flashlights flickered and died. In the darkness, all sound ceased. No wind, no rain, No heartbeat. Only silence. Absolute. Suffocating. Eternal. Yuki's voice broke through the stillness. Trembling. Greater than, Ryo, I think we've crossed over. Ryo lifted the recorder to his lips. His voice was barely a whisper. Greater than, welcome, to Inunaki Village. Chapter 2 The Voice in the Woods. Fog rolled through the valley like a living thing. The trees stood motionless, black silhouettes against a sky that seemed to breathe. Ryo and Yuki walked carefully along the narrow path, their flashlights weak against the gray. Behind them, the car had vanished into mist. Ahead, the forest waited, quiet, endless. Wrong. Keep recording, Yuki whispered. Ryo raised the device. His voice shook slightly. Greater than, time 11:47 p.m. We've passed the bridge. Visibility nearly zero. We're still hearing something. Something. At first, it was only the wind, then came the rhythm of footsteps. Soft and uneven, echoing just beyond the circle of light. Dash dash dash. Whispers among the trees. The forest began to hum. Low, distant, like voices chanting under the soil. Yuki turned her flashlight to the right. Nothing, only trunks and fog. Then a whisper slipped between the leaves. Greater than, Ryo. He froze. It wasn't imagination, it was a voice, a woman's. Close enough to feel her breath. Greater than, Yuki. She dropped the flashlight. Its beam spun wildly, cutting through branches and catching the glimpse of something white. A figure standing between two trees. Half hidden, half there. When the light found it again, the figure was gone. Dash dash dash. The cabin. They stumbled onto an old path paved with cracked stones that led to a small wooden house swallowed by ivy. The door hung open, groaning in the wind. Inside smelled of damp wood and rot. A half-burned candle still stood on the table, wax frozen mid-drip. Ryo lifted his recorder. Greater than, midnight. Abandoned cabin. Signs of recent fire. No footprints. No wildlife. Air temperature dropping. Yuki brushed dust from a shelf and found a leather-bound notebook. Its cover marked with claw scratches. The pages were brittle but legible. Greater than, we heard them again tonight. The dogs that are not dogs. They circle the village. They speak our names. Yuki's lips trembled. It's a diary, someone who lived here. Ryo scanned further down the page. Greater than, if anyone finds this, burn the path behind you. Don't let them follow. A sharp bang shattered the silence, the door slamming shut on its own. The candle flickered back to life. Dash dash dash. The mirror. On the opposite wall hung a cracked mirror, its surface blackened with age. Ryo approached it slowly. His reflection was blurred, distorted, as though another face were pressed against the glass from the other side. Yuki stood behind him, whispering, Ryo, your reflection just smiled. He spun around, nothing. When he turned back, the mirror was blank, the glass cold to the touch. Condensation traced a message across it, forming one word. Greater than, stay. The candle went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. Dash dash dash. The voice returns. In that blackness, a whisper coiled around them, soft, pleading, yet inhuman. Greater than, why did you come back? Ryo gripped Yuki's hand. Run. They burst through the door into the fog. The forest no longer looked the same. The path curved where it hadn't before. Behind them, something moved, 4 legs, scraping the ground. The air filled with the sound of panting, wet and furious. A howl tore through the night, echoing until it felt like the earth itself was screaming. Then came laughter, high, broken, echoing from every direction at once. Yuki cried out, Ryo, this isn't a village, it's a grave. He pulled her close, his voice a whisper lost in the storm of sound. Greater than, then we're already inside it. Chapter 3 The Erased Photograph. The rain had stopped, but the forest still dripped as if it bled water instead of sap. Ryo and Yuki stood outside the cabin, shivering in the thick silence. No wind, no insects, even their breathing felt too loud. The recorder crackled faintly in Ryo's hand. Greater than, time 12:23 a.m. Cabin appears occupied at some point. "We are leaving before." He never finished the sentence. From the trees came a click. Soft, metallic, familiar. Yuki turned her head slowly. The sound came again. Click, click, click. The unmistakable sound of a camera shutter. But neither of them was taking pictures. Dash dash dash. Shadows that remember. Ryo scanned the fog with his flashlight. Between the trees, flashes of pale light blinked like the reflection of glass. He whispered, "Someone's following us." Yuki lifted her own camera, the one that had glitched earlier. Her hands trembled as she looked through the lens. There, in the distance, stood figures, motionless, gray silhouettes, their faces hidden. When she lowered the camera, the figures were gone. When she looked through the lens again, they were closer. "Ryo," her voice was barely a breath. "They only exist when I look." "Stop looking," he hissed. "Run." They stumbled through the forest, branches whipping across their faces. The forest seemed to rearrange itself, leading them in circles. Dash dash dash. The lost photo. They burst into a clearing where a small stone shrine leaned sideways. Cracked and forgotten. Yuki collapsed against it, gasping. Her camera slipped from her hands and hit the ground with a dull thud. When she picked it up again, the screen glowed, showing a new image she hadn't taken. A photograph of her and Ryo standing in front of the same shrine. Their faces blank, eyes white. Ryo stared in disbelief. "That's impossible, you just dropped it." Yuki's hands shook violently. "I didn't take that picture, it took itself." She scrolled to the next image. A close-up of her face, mouth open mid-scream. The next, Ryo lying on the ground, eyes open, throat dark with blood. The next, black. The camera shut off. Dash dash dash. The voice in the lens. Ryo snatched the camera and tried to turn it back on. Nothing. Then a voice whispered from inside the device, as if the speaker had turned into a mouth. "Greater than, do you remember taking my picture?" Yuki screamed, throwing the camera against a tree. It shattered, spilling its memory card into the mud. Ryo bent down, retrieving it with trembling fingers. Even without power, the card pulsed faintly with light. The data inside was still alive. "Greater than, Ryo," Yuki whispered. "It's recording us, even now." He shoved it into his pocket and pulled her away. Behind them, the broken camera began to click again. Click, 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 though it had no battery left. Dash dash dash. The return to the bridge. They finally reached the broken bridge again. This time, fog covered the gap, so thick it looked solid. On the far side, faint lights flickered, like lanterns being carried by invisible hands. And in that glow, they saw people. Dozens of them. Men, women, children, standing perfectly still, facing them across the mist. Their faces pale and blurred, their eyes reflecting the same dull light as the camera flash. Yuki whispered, "They're waiting." Ryo shook his head. "No, they're trapped." The recorder in his hand began to hum, vibrating against his palm. He looked down. The small screen displayed a message. Words no human had recorded. "Greater than, smile." A burst of white light flooded the bridge. For a moment, everything disappeared, the trees, the fog, even the stars. When Ryo opened his eyes, the figures were gone. Only the broken camera lay on the ground, its lens pointing up at him, cracked but still recording. Chapter 4. The house at the edge of the village. The fog thinned as they walked. For the first time in hours, the rain stopped completely, leaving the forest soaked in silence. Every sound, each footstep, each breath, echoed unnaturally, as though the trees were repeating them on purpose. Ahead stood a single structure at the edge of a slope, an old farmhouse. Half collapsed, its roof caved in under the weight of decades. A rotting wooden gate creaked open when Ryo touched it, as if expecting him. Yuki whispered, "Someone lived here, recently." She pointed to the faint trail of smoke seeping from the chimney. It curled upward, slow and deliberate, against a wind that didn't blow. Dash dash dash. The last resident. Inside, the air smelled of ash and wet fur. Dust clung to their throats. Furniture had long been overturned, but on the table sat a bowl of rice, molded black, untouched for years. On the wall hung photographs, blurred portraits of villagers, smiling faintly, though some faces had been scratched out with sharp fingernails. Yuki brushed the dust away and read the name carved beneath one frame. Greater than Hayashi family 1948. The year of the massacre, she murmured. Ryo opened a drawer and found a small diary bound in red string. Its pages were stiff, but the ink hadn't faded. Greater than, tonight, the ritual begins. The elders say the god of dogs demands a life. The traitor will pay with his blood. Only through death can the village be saved. Another line was written hastily below. Greater than, but the dogs keep howling, as if they mourn us. Not him. Ryo felt something cold run through his chest. This isn't a myth, he whispered. They really performed it. The scratch marks. From above, something shifted, the groan of wood, followed by a scraping sound. Ryo pointed his flashlight upward. The ceiling beams were covered in deep claw marks, each one dragging along the length of the room. The pattern wasn't random, it formed words. Greater than, we never left. Yuki backed away, her voice trembling. It's not writing, it's carved from inside the wood, like something was buried there. Suddenly, a heavy thud shook the floorboards. Dust rained from the ceiling. Ryo pulled Yuki toward the door, but before they reached it, the floor cracked open beneath them. The hidden cellar. They fell into darkness and landed on something soft and wet. When Yuki's flashlight flickered on, the beam revealed fur. Matted, blood-soaked. Dozens of dog carcasses, arranged in a circle. Yuki gagged. Oh God, what is this place? Ryo lifted his light and saw symbols painted on the walls, circles within circles, all drawn in what looked like dried blood. In the center stood a wooden altar, and on it, a single human skull crowned with dog teeth. A whisper filled the cellar, low and guttural. Greater than, offer them peace. The walls began to tremble. Hairline cracks spread like veins. From within those cracks, fingers, hundreds of them, reached out, clawing at the air. Yuki screamed and stumbled backward. Ryo grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a narrow stairway that led up into the dark. The smoke. They burst through a trapdoor and found themselves back in the main room. The rice bowl was gone. The table, the photographs, everything had turned to ash. Only the smell remained. A low growl echoed through the house, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Ryo aimed the flashlight toward the sound, his breath short and sharp. At the far end of the room stood a white dog, its fur glowing faintly, its eyes black as ink. It tilted its head, watching them. Then, slowly, it opened its mouth. And from that darkness, a human voice spoke. Greater than, you're too late. The air thickened with smoke. The floorboards caught fire without flame. Yuki grabbed Ryo's arm, screaming, run! They burst through the doorway as the entire house collapsed inward, swallowed by smoke and silence. The ashes. Outside, the sky had turned red. Behind them, the house crumbled into dust, leaving no trace it had ever existed. Ryo looked down at his recorder. It was still on. The last thing it had captured was a faint whisper, almost inaudible beneath the static. Greater than, the dogs were never evil. We were. He switched it off and stared at the forest ahead, where faint lights flickered again. A path leading deeper. Into what was left of Inunaki Village. Chapter 5. The Howling in the Night. The forest was breathing. Every gust of wind carried the faint sound of panting, as if 100 unseen throats were gasping in rhythm with the night. The smell of smoke still clung to Ryo and Yuki as they stumbled down the narrow trail leading away from the ruins of the house. The moon hung low, red, swollen, distorted. It illuminated the outlines of abandoned houses scattered ahead, crooked and half buried in the earth. A ghost town. Ryo whispered, this must be the heart of Inunaki. Yuki said nothing. She stared at the sky, where clouds twisted into shapes that looked disturbingly human. Dash dash dash. The howl begins. It started faintly, one voice. Deep and distant. Then another. And another. Within moments, the entire village trembled beneath a chorus of howls. They rose from every direction, low, guttural, unending. The sound clawed into their ears, vibrating through their bones. Yuki clamped her hands over her ears. Ryo, it's not dogs. It's people. He froze. She was right. Beneath the canine growls, he could hear words, fragmented syllables twisting into broken Japanese. Greater than, help, bury us, please. The air shimmered. Through the mist, shadows began to move, bent, crawling, dragging themselves on all fours. Ryo whispered, they never left. Dash dash dash. The house of scratching walls. They ran into the nearest house to hide. The door slammed shut behind them, though neither had touched it. Inside was pitch dark, except for faint moonlight seeping through a cracked paper window. Ryo switched on his flashlight and gasped. The walls were covered with scratch marks, deep and endless, layered over each other until the wood looked alive. Each mark glistened with a wet, red sheen, as if freshly carved. From somewhere behind the wall came a steady scraping sound. Something was inside. Digging, trying to get out. Yuki backed into the corner, shaking. It's under the floor. A soft thud answered her. Then another. The boards began to bulge, swelling upward like something breathing beneath them. Ryo grabbed her hand. Run. Dash dash dash. The village awakens. They burst outside, and the entire village was moving. Every house shook violently, doors slamming open and shut on their own. Windows shattered. And from within each doorway, figures emerged, villagers, pale and hollow-eyed, walking on all fours, their faces stretched, jaws cracked wide. Their mouths opened in unison. The howling returned, louder, closer, human. Ryo's flashlight flickered out. In the darkness, their eyes glowed faintly white, reflecting the blood moon. Yuki screamed as one of them lunged. Ryo swung the flashlight like a club, striking it. Its head turned 180 degrees but didn't stop moving. Keep running, he shouted. They stumbled down the main road, past broken shrines and shattered signs. Everywhere, the howling followed. Dash dash dash. The whispers in the static. They found an old power pole with tangled cables, humming faintly. Ryo pressed his recorder against it, desperate to leave proof. Static hissed, then, a voice broke through. Not Yuki's, not his. Someone else. Greater than, you are standing where the blood fell. They hear you, they remember. The recorder shut off on its own, the red light blinking once before dying. From behind them came a deep growl, low and guttural. It was closer this time, too close. When Ryo turned, he saw a shape in the fog, tall and canine, its limbs wrong, its mouth too wide. Yuki whispered, Ryo, it's watching us. The creature lowered its head and howled. The sound tore the night apart. Dash dash dash. The end of the night. The villagers vanished. The fog scattered. Only that single howl remained, echoing long after it stopped. Ryo fell to his knees, trembling. What do they want from us? Yuki looked at the ground. In the dirt before them, letters had been carved by unseen hands. Greater than, blood for silence. The red moon dipped behind the mountains, and the howling faded into nothing. But as they turned back toward the road, something glinted faintly at Ryo's feet. A shard of glass from his broken flashlight. In the reflection, for just a second, he saw himself walking on all fours. His mouth open. Howling. Chapter 6 The Blood Curse. The howls had gone. Yet the silence that replaced them felt heavier, as if the world itself was holding its breath. A gray dawn seeped through the mist, painting everything in the color of ash. Ryo sat against a collapsed wall, his hands shaking as he pressed a bloodied bandage against Yuki's ankle. The wound was small, just a bite. But the veins around it had already turned dark purple, crawling up her leg like roots. She flinched. It burns, she whispered. Ryo said nothing. He stared at the blood seeping through the cloth. watching how it pulsed faintly, as though something beneath the skin was moving, breathing. The diary of the ritual. He opened the leather notebook he'd taken from the old house. The pages stuck together with dried blood. Under the weak light, he read the words that had been smeared into near illegibility. Greater than, April 15, 1948. The village starves. The elders say the dog god is angry. Tonight we offer the traitor's blood. His death will bring our salvation. The next lines were scrawled in panic. Greater than, we slit his throat. His blood mixed with the ashes of the white dog. The earth drank it. Then the ground began to scream. The ink trailed off, replaced by a fingerprint, deep red and still damp, though the page was decades old. Ryo's heart pounded. He flipped to the final page and froze. Greater than, whoever reads this, you stand beside the vessel. The Inagami needs flesh to wake again. It has chosen the girl beside you. He looked up. Yuki was staring at him, her eyes half-lidded, unfocused. Greater than, I can hear it, she said softly. It's calling my name. The writing in blood. A drop of blood from her leg fell onto the open page. The letters beneath it began to twist and shift, reshaping into new words. Greater than, you cannot run from what you carry. Ryo stumbled back, dropping the book. The blood spread across the dirt floor, forming a crude sigil, circular, spiked, alive. The symbol pulsed once, and the room filled with a low growl that came from everywhere at once. He lifted his recorder with trembling fingers. Greater than, day 3. The curse isn't in the village. It's inside us. The growl deepened, becoming words. Greater than, blood remembers. Flesh remembers. You are the next. The awakening. Yuki screamed. Her back arched violently, her hands clawing at the ground. Under her skin, something writhed, shapes like claws pressing against her veins. Her breath came in quick, animal bursts. Ryo grabbed her shoulders. Fight it, stay with me. She turned to him. Her pupils had vanished, swallowed by black. A tear rolled down her cheek, bright red. Greater than, Ryo, it hurts. Her voice fractured, part human, part something else. Her teeth sharpened, her nails split into claws. The growl filled the air again, and the floorboards trembled. The blood symbol glowed brighter. The wall of hands. Suddenly, every wall around them began to move, bulging outward. Hands, hundreds of them, pressed through the wood, clawing, stretching toward the light. Faces formed between the gaps, their mouths opening and closing in silent screams. From one mouth came words, familiar, broken. Greater than, help us stop the god? Ryo stared in horror. It was his own voice. The walls split open, releasing a torrent of red mist that swirled into Yuki's body. She convulsed, her scream dissolving into the growl of an animal. Greater than, no, Ryo shouted, holding her. You're not it, you're Yuki. Her eyes flickered, for a moment. She looked human again. Then she whispered, through blood and tears. Greater than, kill me, before it wakes. The choice. Ryo reached for the knife lying beside the diary, the same one that had been described in its pages. The blade was black, its hilt carved with the shape of a dog's head. It pulsed with warmth, alive, breathing with him. He held it above her chest, his arm trembling. Forgive me, he whispered. She smiled weakly. Greater than, thank you for trying. As he raised the blade, a sudden gust of wind tore through the room, extinguishing the light. Darkness swallowed them whole. Then came a single whisper, neither male nor female, soft as breath. Greater than, the blood has chosen. The blade slipped from Ryo's hand. When he looked down, Yuki was gone. Only a trail of crimson paw prints led out the door and into the woods. Chapter 7. The Old Telephone. Morning never came. The sky remained gray and heavy, as if dawn itself had forgotten this place. Ryo sat outside the burnt remains of a house, staring at the blood-stained recorder in his hand. Yuki was gone. The last thing he remembered was her whisper, the blood has chosen. His clothes were soaked, but not from rain. It was the smell that told him the truth: iron, rot, and loss. He pressed record anyway, voice hoarse. Greater than, day 4. I'm alone now. I don't know what's real anymore. The air feels thinner, like something's breathing just behind me. Then, cutting through the static, a sound. A faint ringing. Sharp, metallic. A phone. Dash dash dash. The call. Rio rose slowly, following the sound through the fog. It came from the center of the village, where a cracked, overgrown path led to an old telephone booth, standing crooked among weeds. Its glass panels were shattered. The receiver hung from its cord, swinging gently back and forth. And yet, the ringing continued. He hesitated, staring at the machine that should not be alive. There were no wires, no power, no connection to anything that existed anymore. The phone rang again. Rang, rang, rang. Something in him moved before he could think. He lifted the receiver. At first, there was only static, then a voice. Faint, distant, distorted by time. Greater than, don't go back. Rio. His breath froze. The voice was his own. Dash dash dash. The conversation with himself. Who are you? He demanded. The voice answered, lower, slower. Greater than, I'm you, after it ends. After what ends? Greater than, you can't stop it. The girl is gone, the god has her now. But if you answer this phone again, you'll never leave. Rio's grip tightened. How do I get out? Tell me. The voice paused, then whispered. Greater than, run when it rings twice. Don't pick it up the second time. If you do, you'll hear your own death. The line went dead. He stared at the receiver in his trembling hand. When he set it down, he realized his reflection was visible in the glass panel beside him, but the man inside the reflection was still holding the phone. And smiling. Dash dash dash. The second rang. Rio turned away, heart hammering. He walked back toward the ruins, forcing himself not to look back. But then, behind him, the phone rang again. Once. Twice. 3 times. He froze. The fog thickened around him. He could almost hear Yuki's voice now, faint beneath the ringing. Greater than, answer it. Rio, please, it's me. He turned. The booth glowed faintly in the mist. The door hung open, waiting. He stepped closer, whispering, Yuki? The phone rang one last time, and then stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Dash dash dash. The call from the future. The receiver lay on the ground, still crackling faintly. He knelt down, pressing it to his ear. This time, it wasn't his voice. It was hers. Greater than, Rio, I see you. I'm in the village, waiting. Come find me, or I'll have to find you. The line hissed. Then came a sound, faint at first. Then clearer, the sound of dogs panting. Hundreds of them. He dropped the receiver and stumbled back. Every window in the village shattered at once, the echo rolling like thunder. From every direction came the ringing of more telephones, dozens, hundreds, though no such devices existed anymore. Each ring pulsed with the same rhythm as his heartbeat. Dash dash dash. The photograph. Rio fled toward the forest, desperate to escape the sound. As he ran, he tripped over something, a photograph half buried in the mud. He lifted it. The image showed him, standing in the same telephone booth, receiver to his ear. Only this time, his face was pale, and his eyes were gone. Beneath the image, words had appeared in fresh black ink. Greater than, you have already answered. The ringing stopped. The forest fell silent again. But when he looked up, the booth was gone. Only the receiver remained, lying at his feet, still dripping blood. Chapter 8: The Forbidden Map. The mist never lifted. Morning, night, and dream blurred into one endless twilight. Rio walked alone through what remained of the road, a dirt path that twisted back onto itself like a looped scar. Every step felt familiar, yet wrong, as though he'd already taken it. In his pocket, the photograph burned cold against his skin. The image of himself, blind, dead-eyed, refused to fade, even though it should have been impossible. He tried to recall where he was heading, but the thought scattered the moment he reached for it. Something unseen was guiding him now. Something that wanted him to find. The ruins of the school. He reached a clearing. Before him stood an old schoolhouse. Its roof torn open, blackboards exposed to the sky. Children's shoes still lined the steps, neatly arranged, untouched by time. Inside, the air smelled of chalk, damp earth, and faint perfume, as if the students had only just left. He brushed dust off the wall and found a map pinned there. Its paper yellowed and brittle. Across the center, written in red ink, were the words, "Greater than, do not draw this village." The outlines of Inunaki were faint but visible, small homes, shrines, and a narrow river cutting through the center. At the far end of the map, a red circle marked something called, "Greater than, the Gate of Flesh." Ryo traced it with his finger. The ink bled into his skin, warm, like blood. The hidden room. A noise came from the back of the classroom, the scraping of metal on wood. Ryo turned his flashlight toward it and saw a trapdoor half covered by fallen desks. He pushed them aside and pried it open. Below, a ladder descended into darkness. He climbed down. At the bottom lay a small chamber lined with scrolls and bones. The air shimmered faintly, as if time itself was unstable here. On one wall hung a massive parchment map of Japan, but where Inunaki should have been, there was only a hole burned through the paper. Pinned beside it was a smaller note, handwritten in careful strokes. "Greater than, to erase a place, you must feed it names." Below it, dozens of names were carved directly into the stone, each one crossed out in red. At the bottom of the list, freshly written, was his own. "Greater than Ryo Tanaka." He stumbled back, gasping. The ink was still wet. The voice of the mapmaker. From the corner of the room came a whisper. "Greater than, do you see now?" Ryo froze. A figure sat hunched over a desk, an old man, skin stretched thin over bones, eyes hollow. He was painting something on the floor with a brush dipped in his own blood. "Greater than, you cannot leave what has been erased," the man said softly. "The map remembers more than people do." Ryo swallowed hard. "What are you drawing?" The man smiled, his teeth black with rot. "Greater than, a correction." He turned the parchment toward Ryo. It was a map of Ryo himself. Every vein, every scar, every heartbeat inked with precision. At the center of the chest, he had painted a red circle, the same one that marked the Gate of Flesh. "Greater than, you are the village now," the old man whispered. "You carry its borders." The brush slipped from his hand, and his body crumbled into dust. The moving map. Ryo ran from the room, clutching the old map from the wall. But as he moved, the lines on it began to shift, roads bending, rivers flowing, houses rebuilding themselves. His own footprints appeared on the paper, leading toward the red circle. He tried to rip it, but the parchment pulsed like living skin. When he tore it, blood spattered across his hands. In the distance, a faint ringing started again, the telephone's call, echoing across the forest. But now it was joined by a second sound. The beating of a heart, steady and strong, coming from beneath the ground. Ryo looked down. The soil at his feet was pulsing in rhythm with his own chest. He realized the truth then. The map wasn't guiding him out. It was guiding him deeper. The path of names. He unfolded the parchment one last time. New words had appeared, written in red where none had been before. "Greater than, follow the names to the gate." Every name is a heartbeat. Every heartbeat a door. Below the words, blood trails began to form on their own, snaking across the paper toward the circle. He didn't know why, but he followed. Each step he took, another name glowed briefly beneath his feet before fading, as if the earth was remembering everyone who had ever entered here. And then, at the edge of the path, he saw it. A faint light, flickering like the breath of a dying candle. The entrance to the Gate of Flesh. Chapter 9: The Gate of Flesh. The path narrowed as Ryo walked. until it was no longer a path but a corridor of bone and dirt. Roots hung from the ceiling like veins. The deeper he went, the warmer the air became, heavy, wet, almost breathing. The light ahead flickered faintly, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He could feel the map in his pocket, alive, shifting, whispering against the fabric of his coat. Greater than, every step is a name, every name, a sacrifice. He kept moving. The tunnel. The walls began to glisten. At first, he thought it was moisture, until he saw that it wasn't water dripping, but blood. The ground under his boots turned soft. When he looked down, he realized he wasn't walking on soil anymore, but on skin. Human skin, stretched tight over the earth, trembling beneath his weight. He wanted to turn back, but behind him, the tunnel had closed. Only the forward path remained. From somewhere ahead, a low hum grew louder, voices murmuring in a language older than words. The Chamber of Faces. The tunnel opened into a cavern lit by hundreds of small candles. Their flames blue and trembling. All around him, embedded into the walls, were faces, human faces. Eyes open, lips moving as if whispering prayers. Each face was part of the wall, their flesh fused with the stone. Ryo stepped closer. The mouths were moving in unison now. He strained to listen. Greater than, Inunaki? The word rolled through the chamber like thunder. Then one of the faces turned its eyes toward him. They were Yuki's. Her mouth opened wider than humanly possible. Greater than, he waits at the gate. She whispered, don't let him through. The gate. At the far end of the chamber stood a massive archway of flesh and bone, pulsing with light from within. The edges throbbed with veins, each one glowing faintly red. At its center, the light moved like something alive behind a curtain of translucent skin. Ryo took a step forward. Every face on the wall began to scream. Greater than, don't open it. The god feeds on memory. It wants your shape. He covered his ears, but the voices were inside his head now. The gate's heartbeat grew louder, syncing with his own. It was calling him, inviting him. The memory of Yuki. Ryo's vision blurred. Images flooded his mind, the first day he met Yuki. Her laughter, her fear, her final scream. Then, her whisper. Greater than, kill me before it wakes. He stumbled forward, tears streaking his face. If this is what you wanted me to find, Yuki, I'll finish it. He reached into his coat and pulled out the black-bladed knife, the same blade that had chosen her. The metal pulsed faintly, warm in his hand, beating like a heart. He raised it toward the gate. The awakening. The arch split open. Not like a door, like flesh tearing. Behind it was a vast darkness filled with red mist, swirling shapes, and the echo of endless howls. A voice emerged from the black. Deep, gentle, ancient. Greater than, you've brought me my vessel. Ryo fell to his knees, clutching his chest. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. Faster, harder, until it no longer sounded human. Blood poured from his nose and eyes, forming lines down his face. The map inside his pocket caught fire, its edges curling into smoke. Greater than, Ryo, the voice whispered. The village needs a guardian. One who remembers. The darkness reached out. Hands of smoke and bone grasped him, pulling him toward the light. He screamed, driving the knife into his chest, but instead of pain, there was silence. The red glow flared once, then faded. The stillness. When he opened his eyes, the cavern was empty. The gate was gone. So were the faces. Only the knife remained, buried in the earth, still wet with his blood. Ryo stood, though he couldn't remember when he'd fallen. The tunnel behind him had returned. He began to walk, slow, calm, as if guided by something ancient within him. At the mouth of the cave, he paused. For a moment, he thought he heard Yuki's voice again, distant but kind. Greater than, you did it. You stopped him. He smiled faintly. But when he looked down, his reflection in a puddle showed eyes no longer human, black. Endless, glinting with faint red light. Chapter 10: The Village of No One. Silence. No rain. No wind. No sound. When Ryo opened his eyes, he was standing in the middle of a dirt road. The same road where it had all begun. The forest was gone. The houses were gone. Only the outline of Inunaki Village remained, faint shapes of walls and roofs drawn in mist, like sketches half erased from the world. He turned in slow disbelief. The map in his pocket had turned to ash. The knife was gone. And yet, the mark of the god still burned on his chest, faintly glowing beneath the skin. The vanished world. He called out, "Yuki." His voice didn't echo. It simply vanished into the air, devoured by the stillness. He walked down the road that used to lead toward the mountain. But no matter how far he went, the scenery refused to change. The same path. The same dead tree. The same red sky, frozen in eternal twilight. It was as if he had stepped into a photograph, a world printed in silence. Then he saw movement, a flicker at the corner of his vision. He turned, expecting another shadow. Instead, he saw himself. The reflection. Another Ryo stood at the end of the road, dressed the same, his face blank, eyes dark and bottomless. When he moved, the other moved too, perfectly synchronized. He raised his hand. The reflection did not mirror it. It beckoned. Greater than, "Come closer." It whispered, though its lips never moved. Ryo took one step. Then another. Each step echoed like thunder, though there was no sound at all. When he reached out, the other Ryo dissolved into smoke, leaving behind a small, black tape recorder on the ground. It was his. The recording. He picked it up, pressed play. Static. Then a voice, Yuki's. Greater than, "If you're hearing this, then you're already gone." Inunaki isn't a place, it's a memory. It needs someone to remember. Or it disappears. That's why it chose you. Her voice broke into distortion, overlapping with his own voice from a different time. Greater than, Day 4. I'm alone now. The god feeds on memory. You cannot leave what has been erased. The words tangled into chaos, collapsing into one final whisper. Greater than, welcome home. The people without faces. He turned around, and the village was full again. Dozens of people stood in the street, unmoving, dressed in old farmers' clothes, their heads bowed. Their faces were blank, no eyes, no mouths, only smooth skin. Yet he could feel them staring. One stepped forward, tilting its head. It spoke without lips, its voice echoing inside his mind. Greater than, "Thank you, Ryo Tanaka, you gave us back our names." He stumbled backward. "No, I didn't do anything. I wanted to leave." Greater than, "There is no leaving. You remember us. That is enough." The figures bowed, one by one, and began to dissolve into dust. As they vanished, faint lights rose from their bodies, drifting upward like fireflies. The last of them looked at him, faceless, but somehow smiling. Greater than, "The living will forget. You will not." The final mirror. When the last of them disappeared, Ryo found himself standing before a mirror, tall, cracked, floating in the middle of the road. He stared into it. The reflection was no longer his. The man inside the glass was older, pale, eyes glowing faintly red. He wore the same coat, the same wound on his chest, but his mouth was moving, whispering something Ryo could not hear. Then, faintly, the sound returned, distant, mechanical. A ringing phone. The reflection smiled. It lifted a receiver to its ear. Ryo heard his own voice whisper from within the glass. Greater than, November 14th. We're entering the village now. The reflection nodded once, then turned away and vanished. The mirror shattered, scattering light across the empty road. The end of sound. Ryo stood alone again. The phone's ringing continued, faint and far away, buried beneath the earth. He walked toward the sound, step by step, until the mist swallowed him completely. Then, for the first time in eternity, The village spoke, not with words, but with a single breath of wind. Greater than, you are the voice now. And then, nothing. Chapter 11 The Gate of the Dead. The fog was no longer white. It had turned black, dense as ink, rolling like water in slow motion. Every step Ryo took sank deeper into the earth, yet he never felt the ground. There was no sky now, only darkness above, shifting with faint whispers that rose and fell like breathing. He could not tell if the sound came from the world or from himself. In his hand, the old tape recorder still glowed faintly red. It had started playing on its own again, looping the same sentence. Greater than, you are the voice now. You are the voice now. You are the voice now? He pressed stop. It didn't stop. Dash dash dash. The river of shadows. A soft light appeared ahead, flickering blue, like moonlight reflected on moving water. He followed it, and soon the ground fell away into a deep ravine where a river flowed, but the river was not made of water. It shimmered like oil, thick and dark, filled with faces drifting past, men, women, children, silent, their eyes open, moving with the current. Each face turned toward him as it passed, mouthing the same word. Greater than, stay. Ryo knelt by the riverbank, his reflection warped among theirs. For the first time, he saw what he had become, skin pale as ash, eyes dark as stone. The mark of the god burned faintly beneath his collarbone. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" The river answered in his own voice. Greater than, you. Dash dash dash. The bridge of bones. A narrow bridge crossed the river, made of bones tied together with red thread. Every step creaked like whispering teeth. Below him, the faces in the river followed, drifting in silence. Halfway across, the bridge began to move, breathing, flexing under his weight. He tried to run, but the bones twisted upward, wrapping around his legs like fingers. A voice rose from the dark water below, calm and ancient. Greater than, why do you run from what you've already become? Ryo shouted into the black. I'm not part of this. I'm alive. The river laughed, not cruelly, but softly, like a sigh. Greater than, then bleed. Only the living can bleed. Blood began to pour from his palms, from the mark on his chest, dripping onto the bridge. Where it fell, the bones turned red, and the bridge released him. He crossed to the other side. Dash dash dash. The door of names. A gate stood before him, tall and circular, carved from obsidian stone. It was covered in names, thousands, tens of thousands, etched deep into the surface. Every few seconds, one of the names glowed red and vanished, erased by invisible hands. At the top, new letters were being carved even as he watched. The sound of the engraving was slow, deliberate, like claws scratching stone. He stepped closer. The newest name was his. Greater than Ryo Tanaka. Beneath it, empty space waited, the next name, yet to be written. He touched the letters, and they were warm. The moment his skin met the stone, whispers exploded around him, voices overlapping in countless tongues. Greater than, we were erased. We were forgotten. You remember us, that is enough. He fell to his knees. Tears cut through the blood on his face. I don't want to remember, he whispered. I want to go home. A pause. Then, one single voice answered, soft, familiar, broken. Greater than, you can't go home when you are the home. It was Yuki's voice. Dash dash dash. The gate opens. The names began to shift, rearranging themselves into circles, spirals, eyes. The air trembled as the obsidian split open, revealing a blinding red light. From the glow stepped Yuki, or what remained of her. Her body was translucent, her eyes glowing faintly gold. Her voice was both human and divine. Greater than, Ryo, this is where they brought me. This is where the god sleeps. Behind her, the darkness pulsed like a living thing, forming the shape of a colossal dog's skull, its empty sockets burning with red flame. Greater than, the Inagami doesn't destroy, she said, it remembers. Every death, every secret, every scream. And now it's inside you. Ryo took a step back. I can fight it. She shook her head gently. Greater than, You can't fight a memory. The skull began to rise, its breath shaking the air. The light dimmed. The river below turned violent, faces screaming soundlessly as they were pulled into the black. Yuki reached out a trembling hand. Greater than, if you still love me, then seal it again. He grabbed her hand, though it burned like fire. How? Greater than, with what it gave you, your name. The seal. Ryo looked at the door, his name glowing brighter than the rest. He understood. He pressed his bleeding palm against it. Greater than, I give it back. The gate screamed, a sound of stone breaking and heaven collapsing. The names ignited, one by one, burning to ash. The light consumed everything. Yuki's face dissolved into white. Her final words came through the roar. Greater than, thank you. Then she was gone. The light burst outward. The gate shattered. And the world fell silent again. The void. Ryo floated in darkness. No ground, no body, no sound. Only the faint ringing of a distant phone. And the whisper of countless voices fading into nothing. Greater than, the dead sleep. The god sleeps. You stay. He smiled faintly, closing his eyes. For the first time, he felt peace. Then, far above, somewhere in another world, the telephone began to ring. Ring, ring, ring. Chapter 12. The returning voice. Darkness. Endless, gentle, absolute. For what could have been seconds or centuries, Ryo drifted through it like ash suspended in air. Then came the sound. Faint. Metallic. A phone ringing far away. Rang, rang, rang. Each ring drew him upward through the void, pulling strands of light from his body like silk. He wanted to stay asleep, but the voice calling him refused to fade. Greater than, Ryo, can you hear me? Yuki's voice. Soft. Human. Alive. He opened his eyes. The world between. He stood in a narrow corridor with no walls, no ceiling, only an infinite line of telephones stretching into darkness. Each phone rang at a different rhythm, some fast, some slow, some whispering names through static. The floor beneath him was made of glass. Beneath the glass, the world flickered, cars, cities, lives continuing as if Inunaki had never existed. He could see them but not touch them. He reached for one of the phones. When he lifted the receiver, the ringing stopped. Static filled his ear. Then a voice, human, terrified. Greater than, hello? Who is this? Ryo's breath caught. It was a man's voice. Young. Greater than, we're lost. The GPS isn't working. There's a sign here that says this place isn't part of Japan. Ryo froze. He knew that voice. He'd heard it before, in the final recording. 15 years ago. Greater than, Kenta, he whispered. The echo of the living. Greater than, is anyone there? The voice continued. There's something in the woods. Static swallowed the rest. Ryo slammed the receiver down, his hands trembling. The phones around him began to ring in unison, their cords writhing like snakes. Voices bled through the static, dozens, hundreds, overlapping in desperate confusion. Greater than, don't go further. The bridge broke. He's still here. The white dog. Run. Ryo clutched his head, screaming. Stop, you don't understand, it's already happened. But the phones kept ringing. Faster, louder, until the corridor shook. Then, all at once, silence. The voice in the static. One phone still rang. Different from the rest, slower, deliberate. The sound echoed through the corridor, each note dragging him closer. He lifted the receiver. Greater than, Ryo. It was Yuki again. But this time her voice was colder. Measured. Greater than, you opened the gate. You sealed the god. But the seal cannot hold if they keep calling. He understood, the living. By seeking Inunaki, we're reopening it. Every phone call, every whispered story, every photo, feeding the memory. Greater than, then what do I do? He asked. Greater than, you must answer. Answer what? Greater than, every call. Everyone. Until they stopped remembering. The line went dead. Dash dash dash. The weight of eternity. He sank to the floor. The phones humming quietly around him. The corridor stretched into infinity, each phone a memory, each voice a life brushing against the edge of the forbidden. He picked up one. A woman crying. Greater than, my husband went hiking near Fukuoka and never came back. He hung up. Another. Greater than, we found an old map with red circles. He hung up again. Another. Greater than, hello, is this Inunaki? He hesitated. Then, softly, he whispered into the receiver. Greater than, turn back. This is not part of Japan. The line went silent. One phone stopped ringing. Then another. And another. For every voice that faded, the darkness grew lighter, thin rays of dawn breaking through cracks above. He kept answering. Again. And again. And again. Until his own voice no longer sounded like his. Until there was nothing left but the ringing. Dash dash dash. The last call. Only one phone remained. He knew it before it rang. The old public telephone in the heart of the village. He lifted the receiver. A child's voice spoke, small, trembling, familiar. Greater than, Mr. Rio? My name is Aoi. My friend Kenta said we found something strange in the woods. His breath caught. A tear slid down his cheek. Greater than, listen to me, he whispered. When you find the sign, don't go past it. No matter what happens, turn back. The child paused. Greater than, how do you know? He smiled faintly. Greater than, because I've been waiting for you to listen. The line clicked. Silence. The corridor began to fade. One by one, the telephones turned to dust. Light filled the space, warm, blinding, endless. Dash dash dash. The return. When Rio opened his eyes again, he was standing beside a road. The forest swayed gently in the wind. Birds called in the distance. Behind him, the old metal sign still stood, rusted but real. Greater than, do not enter. This place is not part of Japan. He looked down at his reflection in a puddle. His eyes were still dark, but calm now. Peaceful. The wind carried faint whispers through the trees. Not screams, not howls, just the quiet sound of water running over stone. For the first time in years, Inunaki slept. Chapter 13, the final offering. The forest was burning. Not with fire, but with light, red, gold, and white, swirling in the shape of flames that didn't consume, only revealed. Every tree, every stone, every breath shimmered with the echo of something divine awakening. Rio stood in the center of it all. The road beneath him was gone. The world had turned into a single endless plain of ash and memory. Above him, the sky pulsed like a heartbeat. From that sky descended the god, the shape of a dog vast enough to fill the horizon. Its fur was smoke. Its eyes were suns. Its voice was silence made sound. Greater than, you sealed me once, it said, though its mouth did not move. You carried me, you fed me, you are mine. Rio dropped to his knees, clutching his chest where the mark burned bright. The sound of the ringing phone echoed faintly across the distance, the bridge between the living and the dead still open. He whispered, no more, not again. Dash dash dash. The god's breath. The god lowered its head. Its breath was wind, cold and sharp enough to flay the world to bone. Each exhale revealed visions, the villagers, the massacre, the endless repetition of fear. Greater than, they wanted salvation. It said, I gave them remembrance. But humans cannot bear to be remembered forever. Rio looked up, tears streaking his face. You turned them into ghosts. Greater than, no, the god replied. They turned themselves into ghosts. I only kept their names. The sky shuddered. Beneath Rio's feet, the ash began to glow, forming the circular pattern of the ancient seal once again. Dash dash dash. The return of Yuki. Through the red haze came a shape. Yuki. Her body was light in shadow, her hair flowing like ink in water. She stepped into the circle and smiled at him. Greater than, it's time. Ryo, she whispered. Every curse ends the same way, someone must choose to remember. He shook his head. I've done enough remembering. She placed a hand over his heart. Her touch was warm. Greater than forget. But if you do, the village returns. Every scream, every face, every phone that rings in the dark. The god's voice rumbled across the plain. Greater than, the choice is yours. Vessel. Remember, and stay. Forget, and release them, but lose yourself. The blood sky. The heavens opened. Thousands of glowing threads fell from above, each one a memory, each one a life. They wrapped around Ryo, binding him, showing him everything, Yuki's smile, the villagers' prayers, the children running through empty streets, the dogs howling at unseen stars. He screamed as the memories flooded in. He felt their pain, their hope, their fear, and their longing to be free. He turned toward Yuki. If I stay, they're safe? Greater than, yes. And you? Greater than, I'll be gone. He looked at the god, towering and patient. I won't let you feed anymore. Greater than, then make your offering. The final act. Ryo raised his hands. The blood from his chest lifted into the air, forming a halo of red light. He spoke with a voice that was no longer his, yet entirely his own. Greater than, I give you my name. The god roared. The world split open. Every ringing phone on earth fell silent for one breath. Light exploded outward, not fire, not death, but release. The faces of the dead rose from the ground like smoke, dissolving into the air. The village itself began to vanish, its roads, its houses, its pain. Yuki stepped closer, her form flickering like a dying flame. Greater than, you freed them, Ryo. He smiled weakly. I didn't free anyone, I just remembered. Greater than, that's enough. She touched his face. The light grew brighter until there was only white. The silence after. When the light faded, the world was quiet. The forest had returned. Morning sun touched the trees for the first time in decades. There was no village anymore, only grass and the sound of water running over stone. At the edge of the clearing stood a single telephone booth, old and cracked. Inside it, the receiver hung silently. Then, faintly, rang. The new voice. A young man in a hiking jacket walked up the path. He stopped, curious, staring at the rusted sign. Greater than, do not enter. This place is not part of Japan. He smiled nervously. Creepy. The phone rang again. He hesitated, then picked it up. Static. Then a voice. Calm, gentle, familiar. Greater than, turn back. The man frowned. Who is this? Greater than, my name doesn't matter. Just, don't forget what you never knew. The line went dead. The man stepped back. Behind him, the booth stood quiet, but on the glass, faint handwriting appeared in red dust. Greater than Ryo Tanaka. Then the wind blew, and the name disappeared. Chapter 14, The Path of the Dead. Light. Soft and endless. Not bright, just enough to reveal shapes that had no shadows. Ryo walked through it barefoot. The ground beneath him was smooth as glass, stretching into an infinite horizon of mist and quiet. He could not tell if he was walking or floating. There was no heartbeat, no wind, no sound. Only a faint hum, like the memory of breath. The afterworld. In the distance, figures moved. They were translucent, drifting slowly in silence, the villagers. Men, women, children, each holding faint lights in their hands. As Ryo passed them, they bowed their heads. He realized that every light they carried was a name, glowing softly, pulsing in rhythm with something beyond life. They were not lost anymore. They were waiting. A woman's voice broke through the stillness, gentle, patient. Greater than, you've come far. He turned. Yuki stood a few feet away, her body made of light, her smile calm. Greater than, you freed them, she said, but you didn't free yourself. Ryo looked down. A faint chain of red light stretched from his chest, running endlessly into the mist behind him. Dash dash dash. The chain. He touched the chain. It was warm, alive. Every link pulsed with faint whispers. Greater than, don't forget us. Remember me. We exist because of you. Each voice pulled at him softly, lovingly, yet heavy with longing. He understood then. Every soul freed from Inunaki was tied to him through memory. He had become their path, their bridge. Greater than, if I let go, he said quietly, they'll vanish again. Yuki nodded. Greater than, and if you hold on, you'll never rest. He laughed softly, a sound between sorrow and relief. I guess I was never good at letting go. Dash dash dash. The river returns. A familiar sound rose in the distance, the whispering flow of the Black River. It curved across the horizon, cutting through the light like a scar. The same river he had crossed before, but now it shimmered silver instead of red. From its surface rose faint ripples of memory, laughter, music, the scent of rain, the feeling of sunlight on skin. Every ripple was a life once lived. Yuki stepped closer to him, her light flickering. Greater than, this is the path of the dead. Those who cross it forget everything. It's peace, but it's emptiness too. He stared at the river, torn between calm and terror. I don't want to forget you. She smiled. Greater than, then remember me differently. Dash dash dash. The door of light. Across the river, a door stood, not built, but born from the light itself. It shimmered softly, edges dissolving into the mist. Behind it, Ryo could see faint glimpses of another world, sunlight, trees, the sound of wind through leaves. Life. Yuki placed a hand over his heart. Greater than, you can still return, but you won't be the same. He looked down at the chain. It glowed brighter now, tugging gently, whispering thousands of names. Greater than, they'll forget me if I leave, he said. Greater than, no, she replied. They'll remember peace. That's enough. Her eyes were soft, filled with the kind of sadness that exists only between souls that once shared a body of pain. Greater than, go, Ryo, be the echo, not the wound. Dash dash dash. The goodbye. He wanted to speak but couldn't. Instead, he wrapped his arms around her light. For a brief, impossible moment, he felt warmth, real, human warmth. Then she faded. Her voice lingered, floating like a breath of wind. Greater than, I'll wait in the silence. He stepped forward. The chain tugged once, twice, then broke. A soft chime echoed through the mist, like 1,000 tiny bells. Ryo walked into the river. Each step erased the pain, the fear, the noise, but not the memory. Never the memory. He crossed to the door and reached for its handle. The light on the other side was warm, golden, endless. Dash dash dash. The return to silence. He paused at the threshold. Behind him, the river shimmered quietly, no faces, no screams, only peace. Ahead, he heard faintly, a sound he hadn't heard in years. Wind through trees. The rustle of leaves. A bird singing. He smiled. Greater than, thank you. He whispered, not to the god, not to the village, but to the silence itself. He stepped through. Chapter 15. The Continuing Curse. Rain again. Soft, relentless. Falling over the mountains of Fukuoka as if nothing had ever happened. A narrow road wound through the forest, overgrown, half forgotten. Most travelers never noticed it. It didn't exist on any map. At the end of that road, an old telephone booth stood alone among the trees. Its glass cracked, its paint eaten by rust. Sometimes, when the wind blew just right, its receiver would sway and click softly, as if someone invisible were picking up. And if you listened closely, beneath the rain, you might hear it rain. Rain, rain, rain. Dash dash dash. The new voices. 2 hikers appeared on the road that day, a young couple with cameras around their necks, laughing softly as they filmed the fog rolling down the mountain. Come on, it's just an old legend, the man said. His name was Toru. He smiled at the camera, feigning fear. Do not enter. This place is not part of Japan. Creepy, right? His girlfriend, Mika, frowned. I don't like this. My grandmother used to tell stories about a place like this, a village that disappeared. He shrugged. Disappeared, or was never real to begin with? The phone rang once. They froze. The forgotten signal. Toru grinned nervously. It's probably some prank. No signal up here, but this thing still rings? That's gold. He stepped inside the booth, brushing away the dust, and lifted the receiver. Static filled the air, a soft, rhythmic hiss. Hello? He said. Anyone there? A pause. Then a calm, distant voice, neither male nor female. Gentle as rain. Greater than, turn back. Toru blinked. What? Who is this? Greater than, turn back. This is not part of Japan. He laughed shakily. Okay, that's creepy. Nice try. Mika pulled at his sleeve. Please, Toru, hang up. He started to say something else, then stopped. The glass fogged over. Behind him, on the inside of the booth, words appeared in red condensation. Greater than, you have already arrived. The static deepened, a low, rumbling growl. The whisper beneath the static. From the receiver came a faint whisper, almost hidden in the noise. Greater than, remember me. Toru frowned. Who? Greater than, remember, us. He dropped the phone and stumbled out of the booth. The sound of the ringing returned, louder, echoing through the forest. Mika covered her ears, screaming, as the trees began to sway though there was no wind. Between the trunks, shadows gathered, dozens of them, walking slowly on all fours. Their eyes glowed faintly white. Mika turned to run, but her foot caught on something half buried in the mud. A photograph. It showed Toru and her standing in front of the booth, smiling. But the image was still developing, the colors bleeding like fresh ink. Behind them, in the photo, stood a man in a long coat, eyes dark, face calm. The man by the phone. The ringing stopped. The forest fell silent. Toru turned slowly. A figure stood by the booth now, tall, motionless, half hidden in the mist. The coat was old, torn at the edges. The man's head was slightly bowed. When he looked up, his eyes gleamed faintly red. He lifted the receiver with one hand, holding it gently to his ear. His voice was soft, quiet, and unbearably tired. Greater than, turn back. Toru took a step backward. Who are you? The man tilted his head slightly. Greater than, just a voice. He smiled faintly. Greater than, go home. Then he placed the receiver back on the hook. The mist swallowed him whole. The loop. By the time police found the abandoned car days later, there were no footprints, no bodies, only the camera, lying in the mud beside the booth. Inside it was one final recording. A man's voice whispering, steady and calm. Greater than, November 14th. We're entering the village now. The tape ended with the sound of rain. And somewhere far away, a phone rang again. Rain. The legend lives. They say if you drive too far into the mountains on a foggy night, you might hear it. The faint sound of a phone ringing from deep in the forest. If you're foolish enough to follow it, you'll find a booth that shouldn't exist. And if you pick up the receiver, a voice will answer, calm, weary, human. Greater than, turn back. This is not part of Japan. Some say it's a warning. Some say it's an invitation. And some say it's the last kindness left from a man who never left that place. His name was never found in any record. But on quiet nights, when the wind passes through the trees, it carries a single whisper through the rain. Greater than, Ryo Tanaka remembers. The village no longer exists. At least, that's what people say. But memory is a strange thing. It does not die when the body does. It waits. Sometimes, on foggy nights, drivers claim to see an old telephone booth standing alone by the roadside. They say the phone inside still rings, echoing through the trees. And if you pick it up, a calm, tired voice will whisper, greater than, turn back. This is not part of Japan. The line will click, the forest will fall silent. And by morning, there will be no booth, no road, no trace you were ever there. Only the rain. And the faint sound of someone still answering.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.